Hey guys, tonight we're not racing into battle with Mongol horsemen or galloping across the steppe to conquer half the known world. No flaming arrows, no siege engines, no tense negotiations with trembling emissaries. Nope, tonight we're cooking. You're in a Mongol camp somewhere in the heart of the vast grasslands, where the sky is endless, the ground is stubborn, and the wind seems to have a personal grudge against your tent flaps. You, however, are not a warrior. You're something far more critical to the success of this roving civilization, the camp cook. Now don't laugh. The warriors may wield swords, but you wield ladles. And in a society where food means morale, and morale means conquest, your job is frankly, deliciously vital. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love seeing how many corners of the world we're drifting off in. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake before the sky changes. The stars are still overhead, but the air has that faint tension like the horizon's about to stretch open. You roll off your felt mat, tug on your wool-lined boots, and duck out of the yurt. The ground crunches lightly beneath your feet, frost still clinging to the grass tips. Out here, it's quiet in a way modern quiet never is. No distant engines, no humming wires, just a low shuffle of horses in their tethers and the soft exhale of sleeping beasts. Your fire is out of course. That's your first job. You kneel and cradle your hands around the coals from last night's. Embers whispering them back into life with a few dry twigs, a blow of breath, and the kind of practice coaxing usually reserved for stubborn cats or moody children. The fire catches, and a little victory sigh escapes your lips. First win of the day. You hang the kettle over the flames, not because anyone's demanding tea just yet, but because the clink of iron and the rise of steam will soon become a beacon. The camp will stir around your heat. You're like the step's alarm clock. There's a pouch of barley flour tucked inside your saddlebag. You scoop a palmful into the kettle and stir it into a porridge-like soup. It's not glamorous, but it's filling. You sprinkle in a pinch of salt. That tiny grain of white mineral came a very long way, possibly all the way, from the Himalayan foothill, strayed through dozens of hands, just so it could end up in your pot. History is weird that way. As the sun hints its arrival, with a soft pink bruise on the eastern horizon, the yurts begin to stir. You hear the first muttered words, the rustle of felt flaps, the unmistakable cough of someone who smoked too much pine resin last night. A toddler cries, a sheep sneezes, life resumes. And then here they come. The warriors emerge like sleepy lions, hair-touzled cloaks, crooked weapons, already slung out of habit. They nod at you, not out of politeness exactly, but because they know you've been up longer than they have. You hand over bowls of the steaming barley gruel and accept the grunts of thanks as high compliments. One of them tells you your soup is better than his mother's. You're not sure if it's true or if he's just trying to make you feel invincible. Either way, you let him have an extra scoop. Your assistant, if that's what you call, a boy who mostly naps with the goats and occasionally remembers to stir the pot, finally wanders over. He smells faintly of wool and last night's sheep fat. I had a dream he tells you about a cow that could speak 12 languages. You nod solemnly, hand him a ladle, and tell him to save the dream for the evening fire. By now the camp is fully awake. Horses are being watered, arrows checked, plans muttered over dried maps. You, however, stay grounded in your routine. Cooking in a Mongol camp isn't flashy. It's not theatrical. It's ritual. Historians still argue whether Mongol cooks held any official status. Were you a servant, a specialist, a warrior with a sideline? The truth is likely somewhere in between. Your knife can slice onions and enemies. Your cauldron is your battlefield. And so as the morning sun finally crests the plains, casting golden light on hundreds of domed tents, you add a splash of dried milk to the porridge, stir one last time, and set aside the rest for the old warrior who always wakes last. You wipe your hands on your apron. The day has only just begun. The sun has fully breached the horizon, now a round coin of light warming the frosted curves of yurts and saddles. The camp stretches, groans, breathes as one enormous beast shaking off the chill, and at the centre of that beast's belly you. You nudge the yurt flap open again and step inside, your breath trailing like smoke. It's time for broth. Inside your yurt, the air is warmer, thick with the scent of ash wool and horsehide. You move with care, not because anything is delicate, but because everything here is so precisely broken in. The wooden ladle carved from a mulberry branch, the saddle blanket folded in the corner, the earthen pot that has survived more miles than some men. You collect your next batch of fuel-dried dung patties stacked in the corner. Not glamorous, no, but they burn slow and hot, and if you keep the fire small, you can make it last all day. You pour water from a leather water skin into a cauldron and add the remnants of last night's bones, goat ribs, a chunk of spine, a few roasted onion ends. In goes a fistful of wild garlic, dried and crushed. The pot simmers slowly, the fat bubbling to the surface in golden bursts. You lean on your heels, enjoying the warmth on your face as steam rises, and then just for a moment, you close your eyes. It's strange how peaceful this feels. You cooking soup in the middle of a mobile war camp. A few yurts down, someone's repairing a bowstring. Elsewhere, a toddler shrieks in delight over a clump of dirt. Life, even in the shadow of conquest, has its rhythms. Your assistant ambles in again. "Can I stir it?" he asks. You nod, handing him the long spoon. He dips it ceremoniously and promptly splashes broth down the front of his tunic. You hand him a cloth. He shrugs. "It'll smell better now." Hez not wrong. Outside, you hear the low thrum of a jaw harper warrior somewhere humming through his morning routine. One of the horses sneezes and shakes out its mane. A pair of women pass by your yurt, one balancing a basket of milk skins, the other already gossiping about who snuck into whose tent last night. You don't ask, you stir the broth. As more camp dwellers arrive, bowls in hand, the yurt's threshold becomes a revolving door of tired eyes and grateful gulps. You learn names you'll forget tomorrow, faces you'll remember forever. The old man with 3 teeth, who always slaps your back too hard. The girl with the hawk feather earring who takes 2 helpings and calls you uncle, even though she's older than you. They all eat, they all nod, no one lingers. The work is constant but never panicked. Mongol cooking, like the Mongol army itself, is about efficiency, simplicity, survival made elegant through necessity. Still, not everything is pure utility. There's a tiny clay charm tied to one of your ladles, a figure shaped like a sheep with one crooked ear. Your mother made it, you think, or maybe your aunt. It's soot-smudged, half-cracked, and has followed you across 10,000 miles of grass. You don't believe in its magic, not quite, but you'd never cook without it. Historians still argue whether Mongol cooks were allowed to leave the battlefield, where you kept behind in the rear lines. Did you fight if needed? Some records say yes. Others suggest cooks were considered sacred, left untouched by violence, so long as their fire kept burning. You prefer the version where you're somewhere in between. Just enough mystery to keep you interesting at evening gatherings. Just enough danger to keep your knives sharp. Your assistant interrupts your thoughts again. "There's a fly in the broth," he says. You lean over the pot. Sure enough, you scoop it out. He looks impressed. You didn't even flinch. You grin. "That's not the first fly I've met." By the time the broth is gone, your hands are aching slightly from ladling, and your lower back hums with the kind of pain that says, "This is what you'll feel like forever now." You stretch. You crack your knuckles. You wipe the lip of the pot. Outside, the sky has turned bluer, brighter. A falcon circles lazily overhead. Somewhere across the steppe, another camp is waking up just like yours. Another cook is stoking another fire. Maybe they're making the same broth, using the same bones. Maybe not. But you like the thought. You step out again and breathe deep. The wind has shifted. The air smells of iron and hay and something vaguely sweet. Yuck milk. Which means it's time for your next challenge. The moment you catch the scent on the windsour, rich, a little grassy, you know it's time. The yak milk has arrived. You trudge down toward the corrals, where the animals are kept wind flattening your tunic against your legs. A pair of herders are already there, squatting beside the great beasts, their hands rhythmically tugging at udders into leather pouches. One of them raises a hand in greeting, the other doesn't bother. He's concentrating, his cheek pressed to the animal's flank, like he's listening for secrets. The yaks grunt in disapproval, but otherwise tolerate the process. Their breath steams in the cold air, curling around their horns, like smoke from some half-forgotten mountain deity. You nod to the herder and reach for the pouch that's already been filled and sloshed your way. It's warm, which is always vaguely unsettling. There's something about the contrast warm milk in cold wind that never quite stops feeling strange. You heft it over your shoulder and make the journey back to the cooking station, the milk pouch bouncing slightly against your back. You ignore the drip trailing down your side. Now here's the thing about yak milk, it's more versatile than you'd think. You can boil it into tea, churn it into butter, dry it into curd, or ferment it into something that definitely counts as alcohol, if you squint and have low standards. The Mongols did all of these things, sometimes all at once. Your job right now is the second step, separating out what's usable from what's just ambitious. You pour the milk through a coarse cloth strainer into a waiting bowl. It's thick off-white and smells like everything good and questionable about camp life. You set the bowl over a low flame to warm. Not boil, just warm. Boiling would ruin it. Milk's touchy like that. Your assistant predictably shows up right when things are starting to bubble. Can I stir? You eye him, remembering the great flour incident of last week. You give him a spoon anyway. He stirs, slowly, proudly, only spills a little. You hand him a cup and take one for yourself. The warm milk isn't exactly comforting in a cocoa and marshmallows sort of way, but it's rich, sustaining, almost buttery. It coats your throat, which you'll appreciate later when the wind decides to pick a fight with your lungs. He drinks and smacks his lips. Tastes like a goat sneezed into it, he says cheerfully. You nod. A blessed goat. He laughs, and it echoes slightly in the open space between yurts. Later, you begin ladling out servings for others, warriors mostly, a few elders, one woman who doesn't say a word but gives you a nod sharp enough to slice meat with. She takes 2 cups and vanishes into the mist. You know better than to ask. Historians still argue whether fermented milkairag kumis or whatever the local version might have been was more valued for nutrition or its mild alcoholic kick. Either way, it was sacred, functional, ceremonial, and mildly explosive if you left it out too long. You glance at your storage sack of airag, swaying gently from its rope, still sealed, still safe, hopefully. Now comes the cleanup. You scrub the pot with a brush of horsehair, tossing the rinsing water into the cooking trench behind the yurt. The trench is shallow, lined with stones, and dug to keep things sanitary or at least less terrifying. It smells like boiled everything. Your assistant peers into the pot. There's still a bit left, he says. You look. A stubborn smear of milk clings to the bottom like it's afraid of the world. Give it to the dog, you mutter. The camp dog, a scruffy beast with one eye, and the suspicious cunning of a minor god, slinks out from under the yurt and sniffs. He laps once, twice, then wanders off unimpressed. Can't please everyone. Still, the morning's work is mostly done. You sit for a moment on an overturned saddle pack and sip the last of your cup. The sun is high enough now to warm your back, but the wind is still sharp, tugging at your scarf like it wants to borrow it. Around you the camp hums. A smith hammers something small and precise on an anvil. Children chase a chicken that absolutely does not want to be caught. Somewhere in the distance a shaman's bells tinkle, faintly carried on the breeze like ghost laughter. You close your eyes and let the sound wash over you. This is the strangely peaceful rhythm of the day, the in-between moment, the breath before the next dish, the pause before lunch demands attention. And just as you're thinking it might be safe to sit longer, a voice calls out behind you. We're low on dried meat. You sigh, stand, dust your hands. No rest for the one who feeds the hungry. You head toward the supply yurt, the flap tied back slightly, to let out the heavy scent of stored fat dry hide and the faintest whisper of overworked leather. Inside, shadows stretch over bundles, baskets, and hanging ropes of dried meat, each one looped neatly like your grandmother's braids. You duck beneath a rack and reach for a length of horse meat, dark and shriveled, its scent sharper than most would consider pleasant. This is not the meat of luxury. It's survival meat, salty, sun-dried, smoke-cured, and chewier than a political debate. But it lasts, and on the step that's worth more than taste. You grab 2 lengths and a pouch of hardened Aerug curd called Arul, which looks like bone and tastes like extremely determined chalk. It's protein. It stores forever. Children gnaw on it like candy. Adults pretend to enjoy it. Everyone accepts its place in the hierarchy of chewable things. Outside, the wind cuts sharp, flipping the edge of your hood like it's trying to make a point. You trudge back toward your fire pit with the meat slung over your shoulder. Your assistant meets you halfway, hair fluffed by the wind into a perfect impression of a startled sheep. You look like you've seen a ghost, you tell him. He shrugs. I think the goat stole my spoon. You blink. He shrugs again. It was a nice spoon. You don't ask. Back at the fire, you set to work. The meat must be chopped tougher than splitting firewood, honestly, and soaked for a while, before it softens enough to even consider chewing. You drop the strips into a low pot of broth you kept aside earlier. It hisses with delight. As it simmers, you pull out the bag of arul and drop a handful onto a cloth. You glance toward the tethered horses. One of them is eyeing your bag like it remembers the taste. You adjust your pouch belt just in case. A small group gathers as the scent rises, meat and milk, fire and salt. It's a perfume the camp knows well. You ladle out early tastes to the ones who've earned it. The boy who cleaned all the saddles yesterday, the woman who repaired 3 yurts in a windstorm, the old warrior who taught 2 children how to tie their boots using just one hand. Food is merit in this world, quietly distributed, thoughtfully offered. Your assistant returns holding something triumphantly. The goat, he announces, did not eat the spoon, it just moved it. He hands it over. It's covered in straw and mysterious dampness. You pat his head. He beams. Historians still argue whether Mongol cooks managed inventory with written records, or purely from memory. You've never seen a written list in your life, but you know down to the fistful how much dried mutton you have left, how many lumps of salt are still tucked under the grain sacks, and how much fat you need to barter with the smith for a new pot lid next week. Everything's measured in a kind of internal rhythm, a mental dance. Stir twice, add curd, subtract gossip, multiply by wind speed. The meat softens, the broth thickens. You throw in dried scallions and a crushed bulb of wild garlic just for fun. This stew won't win any culinary prizes if prizes were a thing out here, but it will fill bellies and keep the warriors warm long after the sun dips and the wind sharpens into steel. One of the girls from the Kazakh side of camp passes by and grins. Smells like victory. You nod sagely, or socks. She laughs and keeps walking. You tear off a bit of dried arul and pop it into your mouth. It's sharp, tart, impossible. Your jaw protests, but your stomach cheers. The duality of Mongol cuisine. A nearby falcon calls out overhead, its shadow flicking across your cooking pot. You glance up. Sky so wide it could swallow cities. Earth so flat you can see the shape of the wind. And in the middle of it all, you, with your broth, your bones, your bag of chalk cheese, and your assistant, who is now talking to the goat like it owes him an apology. Lunch is almost ready. You adjust the pot on the fire and sit back on your heels. The scent curls upward, full of old stories. Every bite of dried meat, every clump of curd, every pinch of crushed herb carries some memory of places, of people, of days with more dust than water. It's a strange comfort, and it's what you offer 3 times a day to a camp constantly in motion. You stir the pot one more time and hum to yourself. The goat sneezes. You try not to take it personally. By the time lunch has simmered long enough to not break teeth, you get the signal 3 short whistles from the eastern hill. It's not urgent. It's not a threat. It's your turn to join the scouts for a quick forage. You wipe your hands on your apron, Give your assistant the all-important instructions of don't burn it and set off. The scouts are already waiting, bundled in fur, and leaning on spears that double as walking sticks. These aren't warriors on the prowl. These are the camp's eyes, and nosesmen and women who know where the wild garlic grows, which streams run clean, and which bushes might be hiding a rabbit if you squint hard enough and are very quiet. They nod when you approach. You bring your foraging dagger worn from use, but still sharp enough to remind you it's not just a kitchen tool. It's tucked into your belt next to a pouch of dried mint and an emergency stash of yak jerky. You like to be prepared. You head down into a little gully where the soil stays wet longer than the steppe surface. That's the trick to foraging on the plains. You don't look across the land. You look down into it. You crouch near a patch of reeds, flicking your knife carefully beneath a tuft of wild onion. The bulbs come up like sleepy teeth, dirt still clinging to them. A scout beside you plucks a fistful of something green and wrinkled. Edible, you ask. He chews it, grimaces, swallows, maybe once. You both laugh because foragers know not every plant is dinner. Some are suggestions, some are pranks. You find more than you expect: onion, wild rhubarb, a few spicy little sprigs that taste like horseradish mixed with regret. Enough for a second pot maybe, or to spice the evening stew. You wrap your finds in a cloth and tuck them under your arm. The scouts move on, sniffing the wind, arguing softly in Buryat and Mongolic dialects about where the best river mint might be this time of year. Historians still argue whether Mongol cooks were expected to forage regularly, or whether it was a luxury indulged in peaceful seasons. Given how many recipes include whatever you can find that won't kill you, you'd say it was probably standard operating procedure. You reach a small rise and pause. From here the camp looks like a scattered beadwork quilt yurts, arranged in half circles, smoke-rising horses, pacing children, running in strange zigzags like wind-blown leaves. And at the centre your fire pit, still smoking, still alive. You head back. When you return, your assistant is somehow sleeping next to the pot, using a bundled saddle as a pillow and cradling a ladle like a favourite toy. The stew hasn't boiled over, which counts as a success. You nudge him with your foot. He snorts, snuffles, sits up. I was meditating. You raise an eyebrow. Was it helpful? He grins. I dreamt of a chicken made of soup. You nod. That sounds religious. You add your foraged greens to the pot, stirring gently. The colour brightens, the scent deepens. Something about wild things always changes, the flavour adds a layer of truth. Like the land itself has given you permission to continue feeding people. Someone sneezes behind you. It's not the goat this time. You turn to see a visiting envoy from the southern route, bundled in robes dyed with indigo and dusted with snow from a recent pass. His expression is half curious, half hungry. He gestures toward the pot. For the warriors? You nod, and the cooks. He smiles. Then I will wait for the second ladle, which is about as respectful as it gets. You motion for him to sit. He does, pulling out a flask of fermented mare's milk. In trade, he says, you clink ladle against flask and the transaction is sealed. The scouts return. The children return. The fire flares higher. And through it all the stew simmers richer now, with onion, sharper now, with horseradish, regret, deeper, with whatever soul the river herbs decided to share. You ladle out bowls one by one. Each person passes with a nod. No one thanks you directly. There's no need. You're part of the ecosystem now, as vital as a warm boot, a working stirrup, a sharpened blade. And somewhere in the shadows the goat eyes you again, as if to say, you're doing all right. You stir the pot. You agree. Lunch has been served, eaten and argued over, mostly in good spirits. Someone claimed their portion had more meat, and someone else threatened to count bones next time. You quietly enjoyed the chaos, sipping your share of stew under the eaves of your yurt, while your assistant tried to balance a wooden bowl on the goat's head. He failed. Now comes the part of the day no one talks about, but everyone experiences the lull. This is when the camp slows. Warriors rest their legs. Elders doze in slivers of shade. Horses stop pacing. Even the wind seems to lose interest, curling into low murmurs that barely ruffle your hair. And you clean, because no one else is going to. You scrape the bottom of the pot, careful not to waste even a flake of meat stuck to the sides. You rinse it with hot water, swirl it 3 times, then pour it out onto the scrub grass behind your yurt. You hang the spoon on its hook, wipe down the ladles, and give the soup knife a few slow passes against your whetstone. The metal sings, a quiet lullaby of repetition and readiness. Then you start on the skins, the big ones used for straining milk and storing curds. You unfasten them from their wooden frames and lay them in the sun, gently massaging their seams with sheep's fat to keep the leather supple. You could skip this step if you wanted to explain why tomorrow's yogurt smells like regret and old boots. Your assistant flops nearby, fanning himself with a flat piece of bark. Why don't we just eat the goat, he asks, mostly to provoke you. You shoot him a look. He grins. Okay, not today. The goat seems unconcerned. Historians still argue whether Mongol goats were treated as cherished resources or walking pantries on hooves. Likely both. A good goat gave milk, fat, dung, and companionship, not necessarily in that order. You finish the skins, hang them under the awning to dry, and stretch your arms overhead. The sun is straight up now, round and hot. Somewhere nearby a stringed instrument begins to play, deep, mournful notes that wander in and out of key like the player is reminiscing about a dream that almost made sense. You sit beside your yurt and start working on your firewood bundle. Not many people think about firewood until they're cold, but you think about it constantly. You inspect each stick for rot or moisture, stack them in a crisscross pattern to dry, and tuck a few pieces into the cooking pit for tonight's meal. You pause mid-stack, staring at a bird overhead, a lone kite, its wings stiff and steady. You imagine it's looking for something meaningful, a sign. Or maybe it just wants your leftover broth bones. You toss one toward the grass. Peace offering, you murmur. The kite doesn't dip, but it circles once more, a quiet promise to check back later. In the distance, someone is retelling the story of a lost battle, loudly, as though volume makes defeat sound nobler. The kids run loops around a yurt, screeching something about ghost horses and invisible arrows. One of the women starts combing her hair with long methodical pulls of a carved antler comb. Her daughters watch like it's a sacred rite. Maybe it is. You glance over your stores. You're running low on dried sour plums, but you've still got enough millet to stretch 2 more days. There's a bag of crushed walnuts tucked behind the grain sack, saved for something special. You're not sure what yet. Maybe the new moon. Maybe the next storm. You lie back for a moment on the soft slope near the fire pit, arms crossed behind your head. The clouds pass like lazy horses overhead. The earth smells of smoked grass and the distant promise of future rain. It's not quite sleep. It's not quite waking. It's the middle, the moment between needs. The reason you can endure the chaos of dawn and the demands of dinner. This is your peace cook of the steppe, earned not through silence but through routine, through fire-tended bowls, filled stomachs warmed. You sit up slowly. Your assistant is now fast asleep, mouth slightly, open face turned toward the sky, like he's hoping to tan his dreams. The goat sleeps next to him, both of them snoring softly in harmony. You decide not to wake either of them just yet. After all, soon the sun will shift, and dinner will cool. But for now, you listen to the breeze. And breathe. The sun slides ever so slightly westward, as if nudged by an invisible elbow. You notice it not from shadows lengthening, but from the change in scent. Someone just started boiling bones again. You smile, sit up, and brush stray straw from your tunic. The lull is ending. Time to think about dinner. You check your pot clean, your ladles accounted for, your assistant still drooling on the saddlebag. You leave him be for now. The goat is using his belly as a pillow. You consider it a symbiotic arrangement. Dinner is more involved. It's not just nourishment. It's morale. It's heat before cold returns. It's the thing people talk about as they fall asleep, mouths full of steam and stories. You stretch your back, which answers with a satisfying crack, and head for the meat sacks. Tonight you've got a little flexibility. Not much, but a little. You select a lump of dried lamb, some congealed fat wrapped in felt, and a pinch of precious dried turnip slices, the kind that grow misshapen and bitter and are somehow everyone's favourite. You take out the millet too. A handful will do, maybe a bit more. The pot always finds more mouths. You return to your station and set the pot on a clean, shallow bed of embers, then pour in a base of leftover broth from lunch. It's darker, now richer. It smells like memory. The meat goes in first, then the millet. You stir slowly, watching the tiny grains dance like dust motes in a shaft of late light. You add turnips fat and finally a splash of sour curd from the morning batch. The stew thickens into something hearty, heavy, honest. Your assistant wakes up mid-stir, blinking sleep from his eyes. Did we skip to winter? Just dinner, you reply, handing him the flat ladle. He tastes it, burns his tongue, and nods like a judge announcing a verdict. 8 out of 10. Needs a secret ingredient. You raise an eyebrow. Like what? He thinks. Love. You hand him a slice of raw turnip. Chew on that. As the sky blushes orange and purple, the camp rouses with new intention. Horses are checked, saddles polished, boots mended. It's the hour of preparation. Not for war, but for rest. And your food is the hinge on which the day swings. Historians still argue whether camp cooks followed formal meal schedules or improvised around supply and season. Some say it was tightly managed. Feeding a mobile army took precision. Others argue it was more chaotic, cook what you have, when you can, for whoever shows up first. You think both are right, because dinner doesn't just appear, it builds, through flame and fat stories and salt. You start serving as the first stars blink overhead. The bowl line forms fast, warriors, elders, children, then stragglers with empty flasks and hopeful grins. A young man steps forward with a limp and a split lip. He bows slightly. Trade you a song for an extra scoop. You motion to the bench. He sings as he eats, something low and rhythmic, half chant, half lullaby. It's about a storm, or a horse, or a lost cooking pot that eventually found its way home. You don't understand all the words, but you like the sound of them. The goat listens too, judging silently. You dish out another bowl. One by one the camp fills with the smells of your making. Smoke curls under yurt flaps. Steam rises from mismatched bowls. Laughter returns gentler now, less sharp than midday jokes. The kind of laughter that signals safety. One of the smiths brings you a gifter knife with a bone handle carved with spirals and dots. For the next goat that steals your ladle, he says. You smile, accept it, tuck it into your sash. Dinner fades into the slow hum of evening. You scrape the pot clean and pour the last of the stew into a smaller bowl for yourself. You sit near the fire, legs stretched back to a warm stone. You eat slowly, thoughtfully. The millet is perfectly soft, the meat tender at last. The turnip still refuses to be polite, but it's honest, and you respect that. The stars multiply. A child plays with bones like dice near your feet, making up rules as she goes. The goat finally settles next to you, chewing something you didn't give it. You let it be. Tonight you've earned your quiet. No speeches, no reward. Just the heat of the fire, the weight of a full belly, and the song still echoing in your head about the pot that came home. You don't remember falling asleep, but you do remember the taste of the last spoonful. It's well after nightfall now. The embers in your fire pit glow soft orange, crisscrossed by a few stubborn sticks of juniper wood. The yurt canvas above you breathes gently in the wind, flapping with the quiet rhythm of a contented sigh. You stretch slowly, trying not to disturb the goat snoring beside your feet. The stars are blazing, not twinkling blazing. The Mongol sky is the kind of thing people try to paint and always get wrong. Too many stars, too wide a black. You could fall into it and never hit bottom. But tonight's not about falling, it's about finishing. Evening chores still remain, of course, the kind that creep up slowly and don't announce themselves. So you stand, adjust your sash, and set about your final loop of the camp. First stop the pot. You check it. Cold now. A thin crust hardened on the bottom. You scrub it gently with sand and water, not because anyone will notice, but because you'll know. A clean pot in the morning is a kindness to your future self. Your assistant appears wrapped in a wool blanket and looking like a potato that learned to walk. Need help? Help is always useful. He nods sagely, then trips over a sleeping dog. The dog grunts. Neither of them apologizes. You pass him a stack of bowls. He begins rinsing them one by one in the water barrel outside your tent. You listen to the splash-scrape-splash of it, content with the rhythm. Historians still argue whether Mongol camps maintained strict cleanliness or simply lived with the dirt. But from your perspective, you cook with it, you clean with it, and you sleep next to it. Dirt is not the enemy, it's the background music. As you gather kindling for tomorrow's fire, a soft voice calls from a nearby yurt. Cookie. You step toward it, wiping your hands. The flap lifts. A young girl stands there holding a pouch. She doesn't speak right away, just extends it. For tomorrow, she whispers. You open it gently. Inside, pine nuts, crushed salt-dried blueberries. Someone's winter stash. A gift. You bow slightly in thanks. She disappears again, barefoot on the cold earth. You pass the pouch to your assistant. Hide this carefully, somewhere the goat won't sniff it. He salutes you with the ladle. The camp is quieter now. Only a few sounds, the hiss of cooling coals, the snort of a horse, the laugh of two old friends playing dice in the dark. You walk past the supply yurt and double-check the flap ties. The wind's picking up again. You tighten the knots and make a mental note to check the grain sacks in the morning. Moisture is the enemy. It turns food to rot and plans to disappointment. You turn toward the edge of camp. There's a lookout post there, a simple rock outcrop with a wide view of the steppe. You climb it slow and steady, your breath visible in the chill. At the top you see it all. The camp below, tucked under stars, ringed with flickering lights, like fireflies holding hands. Beyond it, endless land, not empty, just patient. You sit on the rock knees, pulled close, and chew on a sliver of jerky from your pocket. It's hard as stone, but tastes like the day's labour, smoky, real satisfying. You think of tomorrow. Of milk to strain, bones to boil, herbs to crush, fire to coax. It's a strange life, not romantic, not soft. But it's yours. And you're good at it. You hear footsteps behind you, soft ones, your assistant. He sits beside you, not speaking, just holds out the ladle. You take it. For a while, neither of you says anything. Then he murmurs, I think the goat likes you. You nod. It likes everyone with food. He considers this. That's wise. You chuckle. Most goats are. Below the camp breathes. Above the stars burn. And beside you someone finally says it out loud. You made a good dinner. You nod once, because that's enough. Morning again. Not the romantic kind with pink clouds and bird songs. The real kind. The kind where the frost bites before your eyes open and the dew has frozen in tight little stars across your blankets. You groan quietly. The goat is snoring. Your assistant is curled around a ladle like it's a stuffed toy. You get up anyway, because cooks don't get to sleep in, especially not in a Mongol camp where breakfast starts before the sun has fully committed to rising. Your breath curls like a ribbon as you stoke the fire from yesterday's embers. You've prepped your kindling bundle the night before, thank past you for that, and it lights with only a little grumbling. You set the pot back over the flames and fetch your stores. This morning will be simple, a thin millet porridge stretched with goat's milk and flavoured with a sliver of pine nut from the precious pouch gifted last night. Just a few. Not enough to spoil the secret, just enough to feel like luxury snuck into your mouth and said, shh. As the milk simmers, you add the millet and stir slowly. The first scent of morning food rises into the still air, sweet, nutty, warm. Even the dogs wake up with interest. Your assistant stumbles from the tent. His hair looks like a failed thatch roof. Why is it always colder at sunrise, he mumbles, rubbing his face with his sleeves. Because the sky hasn't had breakfast, yet you reply. He thinks this is deeply philosophical. You hand him a wooden spoon and point at the pot. He stirs gently, like he's afraid to wake it too quickly. Around you the camp stirs. Riders tighten girths on saddles. Someone yells about a missing shoe. A child cries, then is silenced by the gift of a warm hand and a crust of dried curd. You begin ladling porridge into bowls. It's not fancy, it's not rich, but it's hot and it holds the belly together for the first 5 hours of the day. A man from the far yurts approaches, arms, crossed, brows heavy with sleep. He tastes a spoonful and raises one brow. You used pine nuts. You nod. He chews slowly. You're either brave or showing off. You grin, both. Historians still argue whether Mongol breakfasts were standardized by routine or customized by circumstance. The truth, both again. When you ride with nomads, you learn to be flexible, but you never abandon comfort food. Your assistant hums softly. It's not a song you recognize. Just a morning tune spun from the fire's rhythm, and the spoons scrape. You find yourself humming too. The porridge pot empties faster than usual. Maybe it's the chill. Maybe it's the pine nuts. Maybe it's the knowledge that today will be long. Because there's word that scouts have spotted a new camp in the distance. Not a threat, not yet, but something that requires attention. Maybe trade, maybe tension. Either way, it means more mouths to feed. You start checking your supplies before anyone asks. You make a mental list of what you can stretch, what you can't, what might need bartering. You make a second list of who might be convinced to share their dried plums if you flatter them just right. The goat nudges your elbow. No, you say. It bleats. Still no. It steals a pine nut anyway and scampers off like a tiny, terrible god of chaos. You sigh and brush your hands on your tunic. Your assistant is still humming, still stirring, though the pot is empty. You take the spoon gently. It's over, you say. He frowns, but it was a good rhythm. You hand him the wash bucket instead. Make a new one. He trudges off, muttering something about artistic oppression. You turn back to your fire, your pot, your pile of slowly depleting supplies. And you smile. Because breakfast has been served. The camp is moving. And today's story has only just begun. You don't get far after breakfast. In fact, you barely make it 3 steps from the fire before someone appears with a problem. It's the saddle maker. He's holding his left hand like it's made of glass, the fingers splayed and twitching. Cut, he says simply, lifting his hand so you can see. It's shallow, just a nick between his thumb and palm, but it's red and angry. Likely from a dull tool, or maybe a moment of distraction while shaping a stirrup strap. Either way, it needs cleaning, and apparently you've become the go-to person for minor medical incidents. Because if you can boil goat fat and millet without killing anyone, surely you can bind a wound. You motion him to sit, fetch your little bundle of bandage cloth, scraps of linen, a bit of horsehair thread, even a piece of rabbit fur for cushioning, and pour hot water over your knife to sterilize it. It's not fancy medicine, but it's honest. You clean the cut gently. He winces once but doesn't pull away. You chew a stem of wild garlic and spit the juice directly onto the wound. He blinks but says nothing. He knows the deal. Good garlic, you say. He snorts. Hope so, it's yours. You wrap the hand quickly, cleanly, a spiral, a tuck, a knot. You'll live. He flexes his fingers. Long enough for dinner, if you're nice. He nods solemnly. Then I will suffer nobly. Historians still argue whether Mongol cooks doubled as medics out of necessity, or if the lines between healer and feeder were always blurry. Based on your current situation, it's safe to assume that if you had hot water and a knife, people came to you with more than empty bellies. Your assistant arrives mid-wrap, holding a pouch of herbs like a triumphant squirrel. I found the last of the dried nettle. You raise an eyebrow. You were looking for it. I was reorganizing the tent, which in his case means shifting things around until the goat leaves. You nod, boil it, add it to broth, save the rest. He salutes, then promptly sneezes into the pouch. You take it from him gently and say, new pouch. He accepts this, quietly. The saddle maker thanks you with a nod and leaves flexing his fingers like a man already composing his next injury story. You return to your fire and begin your mid-morning brew, a mild broth meant to soothe and hydrate. It's made from bone shards, nettle, a handful of cracked wheat, and a strip of dried mushroom from your dwindling stash. It's not meant to impress, just to help people keep moving. You stir slowly, watching the colours bloom in the water. The nettle turns green-black. The mushrooms swell like little sponges, remembering the rain. Steam coils upward. People begin to drift past again, not to ask, just to smell. They pause briefly, inhale, continue, like checking in with the sky. One of the children toddles up and hands you a stone. For soup, she whispers, eyes wide. You thank her, accept it, and place it carefully beside the pot like a sacred charm. The goat tries to eat it. You nudge it away with your foot. You sit back and let the day keep unfolding. Someone sharpens arrows on the yurt step. Someone sings while brushing their horse. Someone you don't recognize plays a jaw harp, the twang weaving through the camp like a lazy bee. You sip the broth. It's earthy and bitter, but alive. A few bowls go out to elders, a few more to guards, a few just vanish, stolen by quick hands and growling stomachs. You don't mind. Theft is just hunger in disguise. You pass a bowl to your assistant, who tries to drink and talk at the same time. Burned my tongue. You shrug, means it's working. He stares into the steam like it holds answers. Do you ever think about why we're doing this, he asks. Feeding people. He nods. You think? Then you say, because it's easier than explaining why we didn't. He considers that. Still burned my tongue. You chuckle. That part's optional. The sun's climbing again. Higher now. The warmth starts to reach your fingers, your cheeks. You loosen your collar and stretch your neck toward the sky like a sleepy sunflower. The goat sits beside you. The assistant hums again. The broth bubbles. It's a good hour. Not loud, not dramatic. Just good. And you hold on to it as long as you can. The quiet doesn't last. It never does. By midday, the scouts return with news. You don't get the details right away. Just fragments pass down the food line like gossip wrapped in steam. Something about a small caravan. Foreigners. Maybe a trade party. Maybe not. Either way, they're approaching. And suddenly your job changes. Because when strangers come, so does protocol. The stew must be fresh. The fire must be steady. The camp must smell like hospitality, not horse sweat and regret. You spring into action. First, inventory. You've got a small bag of chickpeas hoarded for emergencies, and this counts. A few curls of dried garlic skin, one usable onion, and a modest pile of fermented cabbage that smells like ambition and fermented socks. Perfect. You send your assistant to beg for more grain. He returns 10 minutes later with a guilty expression and 3 very smug lentils. They laughed at me, he says. Did you cry? Only internally. You accept the lentils with all the grace of a royal courtier receiving tributes. Then you start chopping. You dice the onions so finely it might dissolve on sight. You rinse the chickpeas twice. Thrice 4 times, each swirl of water releasing little clouds of ancient dust. You layer everything into the pot in stages: onion, garlic, lentils, chickpeas, cabbage, and finally a cautious trickle of bone broth. No meat today. You need the flavour to come from time and faith. The pot simmers, and you stir it with a long-handled ladle, your fingers tight on the grip. You don't just want this to taste good. You want it to speak. Because food is diplomacy, always has been, always will be. Historians still argue whether Mongol camps used food as a formalised welcome, or if it was simply the cook's quiet instinct to offer warmth before conversation. But every camp has its cook, and every cook knows strangers eat first, talk later. While it boils, you prepare a small tray, 2 bowls, a pinch of salt, and a piece of flatbread from the morning batch. You warm the bread on a clean stone, brushing it lightly with garlic water. It's humble, but it's made with attention. Your assistant helps without being asked. Progress. He folds cloth napkins badly, sets down spoons crookedly, and hums a march he likely made up just now. The scent rises, rich herbal complex, a stew that tells a story in steam. We see you. We feed you. You're safe for now. Soon enough, the foreign party arrives. They don't ride in with banners or brass. Just 3 riders wrapped in heavy cloaks, faces wind-burned and tired. One has a satchel of scrolls. Another leads a mule carrying bundles wrapped in reed mats. The third, well, she looks like she hasn't blinked in 3 days. They're greeted politely, but watched carefully. and then they're pointed your way. You step forward, bow slightly, and offer the tray. They don't smile, but they don't hesitate either. The woman accepts the bowl with a nod. The man with the scroll smells it like a wine critic, and the last one sips immediately and exhales with something between a sigh and a whisper. Hot, he says. Good, you reply. They sit by your fire, no ceremony, just knees in the dirt and steam curling between them. The goat approaches, cautiously sniffs one of their boots, and decides it's beneath his notice. You pour them more stew. You watch their shoulders soften. Tension leaves through the belly, not the tongue. Eventually they speak. Not much, not loudly, but they offer news from the west, stories of sandstorms, lost traders, and a river that moved during the night, like it had legs of its own. You nod. You store it away. Camp cooks are also archivists, after all. When they finish, the scroll carrier reaches into his satchel and hands you a small cloth bundle. You open it. Saffron. Just a pinch. Gold as sunlight, precious as breath. A gift for a meal. You nod once, respectfully, gratefully. They leave soon after, bellies full, boots cleaner than when they arrived. They do not look back. You return to your assistant, who is still humming that same odd tune. Diplomatic mission complete, he says. Write your memoir, later, you reply. He grins. You clean the bowls slowly, carefully. The pot is nearly empty, the broth clinging to its sides like it doesn't want to let go. You scrape every bit into a side dish and feed it to a small boy whose only contribution is a burp and a thumbs up. The goat looks offended. The sun begins its slow lean westward again. You hold the saffron pouch in your hand and think maybe tomorrow the rice gets fancy. For now, you tuck it deep into the stores. The day still has legs, and so do you. The fire is down to coals again, and your hands smell like garlic and ash. The stew has been served, the bowls stacked, and the goat for once is silent, chewing on something you don't want to identify. You'd think this was the end of the day. But in camp life there's always a second act. This one, tea. Not fancy tea, not porcelain cups or ceremonies with bells. Just a tin pot blackened by years of use, a fistful of dried herbs, and water drawn from the cleanest barrel you could bribe your assistant into checking. You fill the pot, set it on the coals, and add a blend you've saved: mint, horse nettle, and a sliver of bark that may or may not be cinnamon. It smells faintly of warmth, of memory, of a soft conversation before sleep. As it brews, people begin to drift in again, not for food this time, just to sit. Because something about nightfall in a Mongol camp makes everyone a little softer. The laughter isn't as sharp, the jokes get slower, and people start asking questions like, do you remember when we camped near that frozen lake? Or what happened to that loud goat with a crooked tail? You pour the first cup of tea for the smith whose hands are always blackened, and whose voice always sounds like he's talking through smoke. He nods in thanks and doesn't say a word. You pour another for a grandmother who claims to be 94, and no one dares challenge her. She drinks with both hands wrapped around the bowl like it holds her entire ancestry. Your assistant takes his cup and tries to balance it on his head. You stop him with a look. He drinks instead. The stars begin to pulse in the sky, bright and cold. You stare upward and let your neck relax into the stretch. It's the kind of night where you almost expect the stars to move, to shift just slightly in recognition. And maybe they do, because tonight you feel seen, not watched, seen, by the sky, by the camp, by the steaming mug in your hand that smells like a question you're not afraid to ask. Historians still argue whether Mongol nights were full of planning or simply rest. Was the evening tea circle a time for strategy, for secret oaths, or just quiet comforts? You suspect both. A young warrior approaches and crouches by the fire. He's quiet for a long while before speaking. You used saffron. You nod. He exhales. My mother used to steal a thread of it when she could. Wouldn't cook with it. Just hold it for the smell. You pass him your cup. He sips, then hands it back. You got close. You accept that with quiet pride. More tea is poured, more stories surface. Someone mentions a dream about a river that turns into a horse and gallops across the mountains. Someone else confesses they miss the sharp bread from the western villages, even though it always broke a tooth. Your assistant starts telling the story of the time he mistook a sheep for a priest in the early morning fog. It's not true, but everyone laughs anyway. Even the goat lets out a suspicious huff. You listen, you sip, you stretch your legs toward the fire and watch the flames flicker like old memories. The teapot is nearly empty. You lift it and pour the last few drops into your own bowl. It's bitter now, oversteeped, but it warms you anyway. Someone begins singing. No words, just melody. A tune older than the empire, older than roads. The kind of melody that comes from walking long distances under stars and wondering what's still waiting beyond the horizon. You hum along, not in tune, but close enough. Because tonight isn't about being right. It's about being here. Your assistant has nodded off chin to chest, cradling his empty cup like it still holds purpose. The fire crackles. The wind dances through the tents with long fingers. And you lean back, finally letting your eyes half close. Tomorrow will bring another stew. Another surprise. Another reason to wake early. But for now, you sit by the fire surrounded by full bellies, fading stories, and a sky that promises softly that this too will be remembered. Morning comes again, not with fanfare, but with the quiet urgency of cold air pressing against your cheeks, and the first few voices rising like steam from the tents. You're up before the sun again, not because anyone makes you, but because your body has learned the rhythm wake stoke prepare. The goat is already standing, judging. Your assistant is not. He's wrapped so tightly in blankets he looks like a bundle of laundry that rolled downhill and gave up halfway. You start with water, always water. Fetch it from the barrel, pour it into the pot, add a pinch of last night's ashes because someone once told you it makes the broth richer. You're not sure they were right, but the habit has stuck. You hum to yourself just a soft melody with no name as the pot heats. Today you've decided on noodles. Yes, noodles. Flour, water, a bit of salt, and enough patience to roll the dough thin and slice it into threads, no wider than a reed. Not the most efficient breakfast, but every now and then you like to remind the camp that variety exists, even here, even now. Your assistant stirs awake around the time you're kneading. He blinks at the dough like it might leap up and bite him. You're making noodles, he asks. No, you say. They're making themselves. I'm just watching. He considers this. That sounds like witchcraft. Then grab the pot and summon more broth wizard. He stumbles off with a dramatic sigh, dragging his feet like he's protesting every inch of travel. The noodles come together better than expected. You dust them with flour and let them sit while the broth simmers. A few root vegetables join the pot: carrot, turnip, something that might be parsnip, but could also be ambition in tuber form. Once the broth bubbles, you add the noodles. And just like that, breakfast begins. Steam curls from the bowl as you ladle it into cups. The first few tasters approach. They're cautious at first. This isn't millet mush or goat cheese wrapped in bread. This is new. And new makes people wary. But then the first sip goes down, and a hush follows. Then the requests. Another cup. A third for the rider just waking up. You even catch the stoic blacksmith muttering, "Not bad," before pretending to cough. You don't say anything, but inside you file that away in your mental trophy case. Historians still argue whether Mongols adopted noodle making from the Chinese, the Persians, or invented their own version somewhere along the steppe. The truth, as always, probably exists in multiple places, but right now your camp's version exists here and it works. Your assistant returns with the water, sloshed, lukewarm. Did the barrel fight back, you ask? It had opinions. He slurps his bowl loudly and declares 10 out of 10. Would ride across the empire for this again. You raise an eyebrow. Would you ride to the edge of camp? He hesitates. Depends. Are there more noodles there? You pass him another bowl. That's answer enough. Someone brings you a sack of flour in exchange. Someone else offers a story, a tale of a dream, where wolves sang lullabies and bread fell from trees. It's not payment, but it's enough. Later in the morning, a caravan departs. You watch them go, dust trailing like a second road behind them. One rider turns and lifts a bowl in silent thanks before disappearing over the hill. You nod back, just once. Your assistant sits beside you holding his empty bowl like it's precious. "This was a good idea," he says. "I have those sometimes." He grins. "Should I write this one down for the records?" You pretend to think, only if you spell noodle correctly. That's aggressive. You both sit in the quiet for a while. The pot cools. The goat tries to eat the leftover flour. You let it, because some mornings are simple. Just heat, dough, broth, silence. And that's enough. You take the afternoon slowly. It's not laziness, it's strategy. There's no battle to prep for, no royal visitors, no sick horses or broken carts demanding emergency soup. It's a rare lull. And in camp life, lulls are treated like gold dust, fleeting, precious, and always just one loud goat away from ending. So you rest, sort of. You sharpen your knife, fold the cloths, rearrange the spice pouch that holds 2 cumin seeds, 1 shriveled clove, and your remaining pinch of saffron, like they're royal jewels. Your assistant reorganizes the kitchen tent. Again, which means he moves a basket, pokes the flour sack, and falls asleep against the goat. You let him, because later he'll be the one carrying firewood, and you'd rather he nap now than complain louder later. You sit by the fire and sip warm barley water, watching the wind twist through the grass. Occasionally, someone passes by and nods. Occasionally, they don't. That's fine too. You pull out the smallest pan you own, a more trinket than tool, and decide to make flatbread. Just one. Just for you. You mix flour and water, a touch of salt, then shape it into a disc and set it over the embers. It bubbles, brown, sizzles at the edges. Smells like memory. When it's done, you tear it slowly, eat it slower. Each bite a quiet reminder that nourishment isn't always about the masses. Sometimes it's about your own belly, your own breath. Midway through your bread meditation, a boy appears at the edge of the tent. Hez may be 8, holding a stick, covered in dust, eyes wide like someone who expects to be scolded, but also brought a gift. You gesture him in. He wordlessly hands you 3 wild mushrooms, slightly bruised, possibly edible, possibly cursed. "Where, you ask?" He points vaguely west, by the stone that looks like a sheep. You nod. He sits cross-legged by the fire. You give him half your bread. He doesn't speak again, just chews, smiles with one chipped tooth, and leans his head against your leg like you're the camp tree everyone gathers under. Historians still argue whether Mongol camps formally assigned cooking duties to caste roles, or if it was more democratic. You've long decided that cooks aren't born, they're revealed. In moments like this, when someone shows up with mushrooms and you feed them with one hand while sorting out dinner in your head with the other. After the boy leaves, you test the mushrooms on the goat. It survives. You dice the rest and add them to the evening stew, a thick, root-heavy blend with a base of sour milk and wild herbs. Your assistant wakes up with perfect timing. "Are we feeding nobles tonight?" he asks, sniffing the broth. "No," you say. "We're feeding people who've had a long day." He grins. "So everyone?" "Exactly." As evening rolls in, bowls are filled again. A woman with 3 children takes a seat by your fire. She offers you a needle in return. "It's sharp," she says proudly. A man with calloused hands leaves behind a fishhook he carved from bone. These aren't payments. These are gratitude tokens, and you tuck them into your pouch like they matter, because they do. You don't count coins here. You count quiet nods, empty bowls returned, kids who stop crying halfway through a meal. Even the goat eats slower tonight. The sun slips toward the horizon, dragging the cold with it. Someone starts a slow drum beat on a wooden pan. Not a performance, just rhythm, like the sound of a tired heartbeat echoing through the dusk. You stir the pot once more, then let it rest. Your assistant joins you on a rock. "Do you think we'll be remembered?" he asks. "As cooks?" "As anything." You sip your barley water, by someone, maybe not with names, but with warmth. He seems satisfied with that. You sit together as the sky shifts to slate and the first stars blink open like cautious eyes. You breathe in the scent of mushroom and milk dust and ash, and you let it be enough. You know the rhythm now. The final fire, the last bowls, the slow dance of sleep pulling at the corners of the camp. Tonight is no different, and yet because the day has been kind and the soup has been gentle, it feels a little more sacred, a little more earned. You stir what's left of the stew, ladling it into a bowl for one of the guards at the edge of camp. He takes it with a grunt that means thank you in guard language, then disappears into the twilight. Your assistant washes dishes with a solemnity that suggests he thinks it's part of a sacred rite. He scrubs the pot like it holds ancient truths under the broth stain. You think, well, get more dried cheese tomorrow, he asks. Depends, you say, on trade, weather, the mood of the goat. The goat, for the record, sneezes just then. You both take it as a sign of mild approval. Someone passes by and leaves a bundle of dried herbs at the edge of your tent. You don't see who, but you know what it means. Good food, good rest, pass it on. You place the herbs near the spice pouch, your treasure trove of ordinary miracles. You think about saffron, about wild nettle, about the time someone traded you a single preserved apricot, and you made an entire dessert out of it, just for laughs. Historians still argue whether Mongol cooks influenced cuisine across Asia or simply adapted to whatever ingredients they encountered. You figure it doesn't really matter. A good cook bends like a yurt in the wind, flexible but grounded, always feeding, never fixed. You pour the last bit of hot tea into your own bowl and step out into the cold. The sky is velvet and silver, stars wheel silently above you. The camp is quiet, not still but quiet. Horses shift, a baby coughs. A soft laugh travels from one yurt to another, like a secret with legs. You sit on a rock warmed earlier by the sun and let your shoulders drop. Your assistant curls up nearby, already half asleep, one arm over his face like it'll block out the moon. You breathe in deep. The day is done. And then just before you rise to bank the fire, a girl appears, maybe 10, holding a single dumpling in a cloth. She offers it shyly. I made it, she says, from your noodles. You take it and it's lumpy, misshapen, overboiled. You bite it anyway. It's perfect. Good chew, you say. She beams. I added goat hair. You freeze? I'm kidding. You blink. She laughs and runs off. You stare at the dumpling like it might wink at you. Then you laugh too. You bank the fire. Stack the bowls. Tuck the saffron pouch beneath your bedroll like it's a love letter. And lie down. The stars blink slower now. The wind wraps around the camp like a lullaby. Your hands smell like broth, and your heart feels like a full pot. Let the fire fade now. Let the stars hold your eyes in their quiet net of light. The camp around you has softened. The voices are gone, folded into sleep, and even the goat has tucked itself beside a rock, finally conceding to the night. You feel the warmth of the earth still clinging to the soles of your feet. The faint scent of tea still lingers in the air. There's nothing left to do, no one left to feed, no spoon to stir, no wood to stack. Just this moment, cool, dark, complete. You shift beneath your blanket, the sky open above you, like a wide waiting page. Somewhere soup is still simmering in a distant camp. Somewhere another cook hums as they prepare their fire. But here now, you rest. You've earned it. You've shaped warmth from scraps, built comfort from root and grain and memory. You've listened, laughed, ladled stories into bowls. And in doing so, you've left a mark not on history books perhaps, but on hearts. Let your jaw unclench. Let your fingers soften. Let your breath come slower, and slower, and slower still. This circle is closed. The fire has gone to embers. Sleep is waiting just beyond the edge of the spoon. Take one last breath. Let the dough rest. Let the story settle. And sleep.